All right, everybody, welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we're going to be giving you guys our takeaways for week one of the NFL season. We get to recap all the great games from this weekend. And you guys ready to talk about the best sport in the world? It was a great weekend.
Yeah, that was fun to have fantasy football back. It was definitely a roller coaster of a week one, but that's usually how it is. It was fun. It was good to be back.
Yeah, football. Awesome. I tough reality check on week one, but it's week one, it happens. It's tough. There's a lot of weird stuff happening. A lot of, it is week one. We all have to realize that before we start overreacting, myself included, probably more than anyone. But yeah, football, it's great to have it back. The frustration's back. It just feels good, but yay, football, it's back.
Yeah, all three of our teams lost, but we're prevailing through this late night NFL Seekers podcast right after the Bills Monday night game. We're still gonna get us out to you. We're gonna get our recaps out to you.
All three of our real NFL teams lost, but all three of our fantasy teams, which is more important, won.
Yep, very much more important.
We have control over fantasy. We are the coaches. But yeah, I mean, maybe we should be NFL coaches, after some of our coaches just absolutely. We'll get into that. That's for a little bit later into the podcast. Fantasy football, though, awesome. We all came out on top. Feels good to have fantasy back for sure.
Yeah, hopefully all you guys won your fantasy weeks as well. Let's get into the recaps because we have a lot to talk about, and I feel like we have a lot of rants to go on for this week, especially. We'll start with this Chiefs game. The Lions go into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs 21-20. Josh, you were right about that one. You picked the Lions, and Kadarius Toney, man, what are you doing? Kadarius Toney impacted like at least negative 11 points in this game. His drops were all during critical plays, like third downs in the red zone. He just was fumbling every opportunity that he got. Like Mahomes was feeding him. He showed a lot of trust in him, and Toney couldn't do anything. It was pretty pathetic. He lost him this game. And shout out to the Lions. They were awesome. Goff played a very clean, efficient game. He is just so solid with Ben Johnson. I love how they use him. And Amon-Ra has like true jetpacks after the catch. Like his stop start is literally some of the best you'll see. It's absurd. So that Lions offense is going to be dangerous. And yeah, once the Chiefs get their Chris Jones and Travis Kelce back, they'll be fine. But yeah, Tony, what are you doing? That was a mess.
Yeah, I mean the Lions running back, especially when it pertains to fantasy, which is pretty much what we're really focusing on. David Montgomery, 21 carries for 74 yards. You'd love to see the volume, but 74 yards out of that, that's pretty gross. That's like what, 3.5 yards a carry?
3.5, yep.
But I mean, that's a very David Montgomery line. For where you got him, you probably have him as your flex. Maybe he's your RB2. It's fine. Jahmyr Gibbs, though, we want to see those touches go up. Only 7 rushes, granted. What's his bucket? Dan Campbell did say those numbers are going to go up after week one. So even with the little touches he had, he was so productive and he was fun to watch. Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go over overview of the game, kind of my opinion. It kind of, Patrick Mahomes is an absolute alien, and he kind of showed that in this game. But the Chiefs kind of came back to earth and reality. It kind of felt like, the big evil brother, can and was beaten, and it kind of seems like they're coming down a little bit. I mean, it kind of shows you they are beatable. The Chiefs are a beatable team, and they don't look very good. Patrick Mahomes looked like an absolute alien. I mean, there's a play which blew me away. He had a defender on the ground, pulling him down, and he's just standing there. And the guy's on his like trying to twist him and I don't even know what it was, trying to like suplex him from the ground. And he just stands there and then makes
he was still scanning downfield, like looking at his receivers as he was getting strangled.
As he's being tackled and twisted up, and then hits a guy right in the chest and he drops it. But I mean, so it just kind of showed the Chiefs, they are a beatable team. They don't look as scary. Obviously, Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, their second and third best player, were out. But the Chiefs, wide receiver core, pretty horrendous, pretty bad. I mean, there wasn't much going on. They should, obviously get a lot better when Kelce. But it kind of makes you think, if you can shut down Kelce, can you shut down the Chiefs? It's kind of interesting. But also want to shout out, because the Lions played heck of a football game. Their defensive line was absolutely phenomenal. I thought all across the board they were fantastic. They were keeping Mahomes pretty much in the pocket. They were getting pressures. Aiden Hutchinson, such a stud. James Houston really turning into something special. But shout out to the Lions. They played a heck of a football game. Dan Campbell's got something brewing up there. It's really awesome. And their offense was efficient enough. I thought it'd be a little bit higher scoring, but it's week one. They're very efficient and looked very good.
Yeah, Dan Campbell had them playing a very smart, just good brand of football. It was really exciting. I feel like they're a playoff lock after watching that performance. Anything else you guys want to say on this game before we move on?
No, I mean, just once Travis Kelce comes back, which ironically is probably going to be next week when me and Danny play each other, and Danny has Kelce Mahomes, he's going to be a stud, and Mahomes is going to be even better.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the Chiefs with. I mean, obviously, without a receiver that can catch a ball, and then with a receiver that'll catch a ball, it'll be interesting. I mean, they did it last year. They did have Juju, though. I do think they're in for a little bit of a regression, though. I mean, I do, but they did just sign Chris Jones. They got him back on the team, so they'll have both of them back next week.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. I honestly think Kadarius Toney even will be fine, and that's saying a lot. We'll move in to the Bengals and Browns game. The Browns I guess they beat Cleveland at home 24-3, and that was awesome. It was dominant. Shout out to the Browns defense. I have been kind of hyping up the Browns all offseason. They have a stacked roster, and that Browns defense was stout. They were dominant. Burrow didn't even throw for 100 yards. It was incredible. That secondary is awesome, like my favorite corner trio in the NFL. And Myles Garrett is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. He will win Defensive Player of the Year, and definitely calling my shot on that now. I actually said that in the AFC North deep dive as well. And this Browns team is awesome. Watson started out shaky. He had a very bad pick, but he picked it up, and he kind of rallied around the team, and they ended up winning a pretty good win. So I like the Browns. I'm happy I picked them, and a route, man.
The fact that they were able to hold those wide receivers to Jamar Chase 39 yards and T Higgins 0 on 8 targets, that's impressive. Maybe this Browns team is better than we thought. And even Deshaun Watson, I was probably the lowest. I think I was the lowest in Deshaun out of us three, and he came out and he had a solid first week with 2 touchdowns, 1 passing, 1 rushing. He was good. He was really solid. So maybe this Browns team is going to be better than some of us thought. Granted, Amari Cooper was kind of the same old Amari Cooper as he was last year with Deshaun Watson, which was bad. Only 3 catches off 7 targets for 37 yards. That's not what you want out of your 5th, 6th round pick in Amari Cooper. So I don't know. For the most part, though, Browns looked very good. Obviously, I guess we'll see what the Bengals do next week. But that was embarrassing.
Yeah, feels like a week 1 football game, and Joe Burrow kind of even came out and said that. But I mean, for a guy that just got paid $275 million, you kind of expected more. Kind of wanted to see a little bit more enthusiasm. And kind of wanted to see a little bit more emotion. In the press conference, he just kind of didn't even. It was kind of weird. He's just like, "Yeah, guys, it's week 1. I don't really care." But I mean, also that's a level of maturity and like level-headed. Like he's not getting too worked up. He's just like, "Yeah, it's week 1. It's weird. We're gonna move past it." We played some pretty bad football, and it was a weather game. It was very rainy. The Browns definitely controlled the ground game. I mean, Nick Chubb. Shout out to Nick Chubb, and that dude is the best running back. When I say like pound for pound, strongest, hardest to tackle. I mean, that dude's. I don't think he ever loses a yard. He's always going forward, and he's just such a good runner. And I really feel like Nick Chubb controlled that game, and the Browns defense was very underrated. And I mean, stopping Joe Burrow and having Joe Burrow throw for under 100 yards and shutting him out, not even allowing a touchdown, was just phenomenal play by the Browns. Can't give them enough credit. Pretty sure Danny predicted this one, so shout out to Dan. He kind of called a shot on that one. I wasn't expecting it, but maybe the Browns are for real this year. We'll see.
Yeah, I think this was kind of just a coming out party for the Browns. I wouldn't even really take it away anything too negative for the Bengals. I think the Bengals will be just fine. We saw Joe Burrow against the Steelers last year, week 1. It was a disaster. Everyone was thinking he was going to be the next bust, and then he was perfect every other week of the season, literally perfect. So the Bengals will be just fine. I'm not worried. I think this was kind of more just a story of the Browns coming out on national TV at home and just playing really good against a really good team. So I'm excited for both these teams. Anything else you want to say, Shane?
I mean, we know Nick Chubb is on the ground. The dude is probably the best in the league, but he also brought in 4 catches off 4 targets. That adds so much value to him, considering what he's drafted to do. As a fantasy, when you draft him in fantasy, you're pretty much banking on him just getting 100 plus rushing yards and a touchdown. But if you add in 4 or 5 catches, that's going to be huge. So that was cool to see.
Yep, that's something we really wanted to see for the fantasy aspect of Nick Chubb. So it's good to see that confirmed. We'll get on to our next game. The Ravens beat the Texans 25-9 at home, and I think Shane can pull up the stats, but Zay Flowers was just special, man. I think his target share was like 45%, and I know that'll go down with Mark Andrews coming in, but I think Zay Flowers was the star of the show and kind of the biggest takeaway because he is already their alpha wide receiver 1 over Odell, and they're feeding him, and he's just a really fun player to watch, and he flashes on tape.
Zay Flowers, I feel like Zay Flowers is kind of the only takeaway when it comes to fantasy here. Lamar Jackson's he sucked, but he's going to be fine. Zay Flowers, he had 10 targets. He had 9 catches on 10 targets. The next receivers were Odell and Rashad Bateman, both with 3 targets.
Wow.
J.K. Dobbins also had 3 targets, and then a couple of 1-target guys. Zay Flowers was the clear guy Lamar is going to. Obviously, that's going to go down a little bit when Mark Andrews comes back, but I do think this is telling for the future that Zay Flowers is going to be is going to be Lamar Jackson's dude. That was a crazy first game for this rookie. Man, it feels good to have him on my fantasy bench.
I hate you. You picked him like 2 picks before I did, and yeah, the fact that he like literally doubled Bateman and Odell, that's insane. He's going to be awesome.
Yeah, he definitely showed that alpha mentality out there, and he looked like he was the most comfortable receiver too. I mean, he just felt like he was right at home. He felt like he fit right into that offensive scheme, and they immediately used him. Not very often do you see a rookie wide receiver in his first game getting 10 targets and catching 10 of them. Catching 9 of them. Yeah, he was impressive. I kept watching him on. I was using that new in our YouTube TV, the new Octobox or whatever, and I had that
multi-view.
Yeah, and multi-view is cool. And I kept noticing Zay Flowers every 5 seconds. And he kept popping up on Red Zone, and he was fun and exciting. I definitely think it was a rough outing for the rookie quarterbacks this week, as week 1 usually is, especially playing a tough Ravens defense. I honestly thought both defenses in this game played very, very well. The Ravens just kind of started to pull away at the end. But I mean, it was, I honestly want to shout out DeMeco Ryans. I thought he did a pretty good job in his first debut as a head coach. They just couldn't put it all together. And I don't feel like the talent is fully quite there on offense, but I think they'll come together. But shout out to the Ravens. They had a good win, good defensive battle, a lot of sacks in this game. The run game for the Texans was non-existent. That doesn't help CJ Stroud at all. But I'm not too worried about the Texans. I think they'll bounce back.
I think CJ Stroud looked better against a tougher defense than Bryce Young did against a not tough defense. I mean, CJ Stroud, 242 yards, 28 for 44, no touchdowns, but no picks. I mean, that's a fine outing for your rookie quarterback on a bad team. So I was impressed by CJ Stroud.
Yeah, going into Baltimore in your very first start is a very tough environment. So I think it's kind of a positive outlook for both teams and that takeaway. We'll get on to the next game, and it's the Buccaneers at Vikings. The Bucks go into Minnesota and win by 3. I'm kind of pissed I didn't stand my ground more and pick the Bucks because I was saying I had a nasty feeling this game was going to be grossly close, and it was, but I picked the Vikings, and I shouldn't have. I should have stood with Baker and picked Baker because he balled out. It was a good game. It was an interesting game. There wasn't too many takeaways. Kind of feels like a Vikings thing to do to choke that game away to the Buccaneers. Honestly, I'm not really overreacting too much. Are you guys overreacting to this game at all?
No, but I do think the Buccaneers are probably going to be better than we expected, just based off this performance, which is selfishly nice to see because I have a lot of Mike Evans shares. But Baker, I mean, he's just a gritty dude. He plays hard, and he made all these weapons as in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin valuable for fantasy. I think Rachaad White was kind of a letdown. He was definitely one of my dudes going into the draft season. He had 17 carries, which is a ton, which is great, but only 39 rushing yards. That's like 2.3 yards a carry. And then only 2 targets, and he's a PPR dude. So we definitely need to see him, Rachaad White's targets go up. If they don't, that's going to be concerning.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not worried about the Vikings. They're just the Chargers of the NFC. So they'll Charger, as I like to say. But honestly, this game just gives me like flashbacks of like Ryan Fitzmagic week 1. Baker kind of has that mojo, kind of just like comes out here and balls for a week or two, looks fantastic, everyone gets excited, and then he just disappears. And so that's kind of what I think is going to happen with the Buccaneers. I think they'll play good for a week or two, kind of surprise some people, and then I think they'll be horrible and Baker will start throwing picks. But they did play well. The defense did look really good. They were in Kirk Cousins' face all day long. In the first half, I think Justin Jefferson had like 120 yards. And then in the second half, that defense and Jamal Dean, I think, he was on him all day long. He put the claps. Yeah, that's good defensive football. That's how you go into a halftime and you adjust, and then you lock them down for 30 yards in the second half. Must feel nice to have a coach that's smart enough to adjust at halftime. But that's besides the point. Shout out to the Bucs. It's Fitzmagic 2.0 with Baker. We'll see next week.
Hey, I think both of you, I think it may have been more so Josh. Do you remember your 7th round rookie you guys were kind of high on in this backfield?
He's on the practice squad, I know.
I think he got cut, actually, and then he got...
No. Ty Chandler was there. Did you see his stat line? He had 3 carries for, drumroll please, 0 yards.
Yeah, that's the second most carries on the team.
Yeah, and then tied for second most with the quarterback, Kirk Cousins. So
I will say, Dwayne McBride not being on an NFL roster right now might be the biggest head scratcher that I've ever seen, but that is crazy. He is in the practice squad, so we were wrong about that.
This is Alexander Madison's backfield. I love it. It wasn't a great start, but I mean, as your running back 2, I think he had 13.4 fantasy point PPR points. That's just fine. So I was happy with it, but I definitely think it'll be better going forward.
Shane steadily hyping up his his fantasy team.
Let's just say my fantasy team.
He just came on here to confirm his fantasy.
He's just I was right about him.
But yeah, I think the Vikings, there's nothing to worry about, and the Bucs are probably out of the Caleb Williams sweepstakes because they're going to be in a lot of games because they're just going to be feisty
and play Jordan Addison next week. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Jordan Addison, he did score a touchdown, so shout out to the rookie.
Yep. All right, next game.
It was an electric one too. That Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson is going to be electric for years to come. We'll get into the Panthers Falcons game, and the Falcons handled this one pretty easily at home, 24-10. I was wrong about this. I picked the Panthers, and I put too much trust in Bryce Young. I guess that was a little rough. The Falcons, I think, are going to win this division with running the ball every play. It's pretty crazy. They passed the ball 18 times and they won this division. That's pretty surreal. Or they won this game, and that's pretty surreal to me. The Panthers defense is going to need to step it up if they want to win the division. And shout out to Jesse Bates, 2 picks in his first game with the Falcons. That's awesome. And I'm going to pass this off to Shane with saying Drake London, 1 target, 0 catches. Kyle Pitts is another disaster. You were right about that one. And Tyler Allgeier's running style is kind of too badass to sit him on the bench. So this Falcons team is interesting for fantasy.
I will mention the wideouts. So far, yes, I'm right in Kyle Pitts. We'll see. I'm probably going to be right all throughout the year, but so far I'm right there. And Drake London, I remember saying this dude's got to fall if I want to draft him. He's being drafted way too high, and that is, I mean, that dude was straight up just out there doing cardio. He's getting paid to run cardio. Something has to actually. I take that back. Something does. The problem with this is they blew them out, and so whatever they're doing worked. So the wide receivers don't necessarily need to be used. So with that being said, I know Josh has an investment in the Bijan. Why don't you give us your thoughts on the running back at the backfield for the Falcons?
Quite frankly, I'm pissed. I drafted Bijan Robinson, and not that Bijan Robinson didn't play fantastic, because he did. He was electric when he was running the ball. But why the hell are we giving the ball to Tyler Algier at the 1 yard line every single time when you have Bijan Robinson, your 7th overall pick, who's probably the best running back prospect we've ever seen?
8th.
It absolutely was frustrated the hell out of me. I mean, at least he, I mean, if we're looking at a positive, he was the leading receiver on the team. 6 receptions. He honestly didn't do too good. He had that really good touchdown where he broke a couple tackles, but he was 6 receptions for 27 yards and a touchdown. Thank goodness. But Bijan Robinson should have put up a 30-plus point game in his first fantasy debut. And yet and I don't know if the Falcons are doing this just to make me mad. But I mean, they clearly like Tyler Algier, and he was the leading carrier with 15 carries. And I mean, he was efficient. He 75 yards, 2 touchdowns. But I mean, those touchdowns were gimmies, and Bijan would have scored them. So I mean, it's just whoever they wanted in. But yeah, they're kind of running the ball at will. I'm really anxious to see how week 2 goes. Maybe it's kind of like a Dan Campbell thing. Like, we don't want to overwhelm Bijan, and we don't want to, overwork him. Our high draft pick investment. We just want to kind of ease him into the NFL. Maybe that's it. But I mean, far too many carries for Tyler Algier. I mean, Bijan should be the focal point of that run game, and he is the better runner. He is. I mean, in my opinion, I think he goes out there and he makes people miss at a much higher rate. But I mean, it's frustrating. I'm mad. I've drafted Bijan. And yeah, in my 3 main leagues, I play all in the first round. So that did irritate me. My rant is done.
With those pass catchers, Desmond Ridder only threw the ball 18 times. That is just not going to cut it for.
At least Bijan's got like a 30% share in the passing game.
And that's the problem. The running backs are getting majority of it. The wideouts, it's just not enough volume for them to be relevant in fantasy.
Yeah, and that little cut step Bijan had on that touchdown too. His cuts are electric. He's literally Barry Sanders 2.0. I don't mind giving Tyler Algier as much as he wants, because you got to keep that guy healthy and fresh, because Bijan's going to get you a touchdown a week anyway in fantasy, and you're not going to complain about it if he's just healthy, because that guy's a legend. That guy's already just insane, man.
This might be an insane running back duo.
And if he's their number 1 wide receiver, which he was last week, I'll take it. Take it. I mean, I definitely want those 1 yard touchdowns. That really frustrates me. Because I mean, Bijan had to score from like 10 yards out on a pass, which is great, but I want those gimmies. And it kind of feels like a Tony Pollard and Zeke kind of backfield 2.0 here in Atlanta.
Yeah, Bijan will definitely pay off. We'll go to the next game. The Commanders beat the Cardinals 20-16 at home, and that the Cardinals kept this sweatier than I expected. Not gonna lie, I thought this was gonna be like a 30-point blowout, but Cardinals went in there with Josh Dobbs, and Josh Dobbs did what he does best, and he just does things with zero notice with players that he's never talked to before or heard of. So it was a weird dynamic, but the Commanders came on top. It was a little grosser than I expected, but they got the job done. And Sam Howell looked fine.
James Conner, he's probably the one worth mentioning on the Cardinals. Him getting 5 catches is great, but turning that into 8 yards is ridiculous. That has got to go up if you have him on your fantasy team and you want him to be more valuable, because that's absurd. On the other side of the ball, I mean, Brian Robinson, he's just a workhorse. 19 carries, only 2 targets, but if he can get it done on the ground, granted he had that receiving touchdown, which seemed kind of lucky. It was that was a hectic play. But I like Brian Robinson a lot this year. It's clearly his backfield.
Yeah, I think Antonio Gibson only had 1 target, so it's definitely just all Brian's backfield.
Yeah.
This felt like a battle of the JV teams to me. It was just kind of ugly.
The battle for Caleb Williams.
Oh yeah, the quarterback play was ugly. I didn't like much that Sam Howell didn't really target Terry McLaurin. Don't appreciate that at all. But yeah, just felt like a JV game to me, and very sloppy. Definitely 2 teams that won't be going very far. Like Shane said, the tank battle for Caleb Williams, or Drake May, because Caleb Williams is not going to go to a toxic team apparently. So he might stick out another year in college. It makes sense when you're getting paid, to play in college nowadays. But yeah, I mean, fantasy wise, absolute disaster class all around the board. Yeah, just the battle of the JVs, and I sure hope Sam Howell can target his best receiver next week a little bit more often.
Yeah, Sam Howell loves Jahan Dotson. We know this, but not too much to take away from this game. We'll get on to the Jaguars and Colts game, which was pretty fun. Watching Anthony Richardson's debut. Shane started him in fantasy. The Jaguars go into Indy and win 31-21. And yeah, Anthony Richardson was awesome. I feel like you kind of got confirmation that you can literally start him any given week in fantasy and not worry about it. He has a good baseline. He can run. He has a great arm, and I think he can kind of get some mental things cleaned up and develop into a really good quarterback with Shane Steichen. So I'm not worried about the Colts at all. I would actually came away from that game pretty optimistic for the Colts, and Calvin Ridley for the Jaguars. That guy looks so fresh, looks like he shoots out of a cannon. His stop start is crazy. He looks like he hasn't lost a step, and I'm really excited for that Trevor connection because it looked awesome already. And rip Christian Kirk, 1 catch.
Yeah, Christian Kirk. That's I can't believe he week 1, after coming off such a great season with Trevor Lawrence, he got pushed all the way down to irrelevance here in week 1. But Calvin Ridley went absolutely berserk with 11 targets. He got a touchdown. Zay Jones looks like he's going to be the wide receiver too. I guess we'll probably be talking about him when we go talk. Are we going to be doing waiver wire stuff tomorrow, or are we going to talk about those?
For our preview episode, we'll kind of just be talking about like the main guys we're targeting for every team. So yeah, like kind of, but yeah.
And then I guess he's a rookie and it's week 1, but I was kind of hoping Tank Bigsby would see more action. He only had 7 carries, and he had a fumble, so that sucks. So hopefully we see more of him. But yeah, Travis Etienne, I guess me getting so low on him was wrong. I should have stayed high on him.
Yeah. I feel like outside of the one big run, he wasn't very efficient. He had that one like 30-yard touchdown run. If he didn't have that, he would have been meh. But I think, yeah, the storyline of the day is honestly both quarterbacks looked really good. I didn't think Anthony Richardson played bad at all in his debut. And he was actually the whole offense, it kind of felt like. And, it kind of just proves that Shane Steichen is a quarterback whisperer and he can turn anyone good. And I think Anthony Richardson's got a really bright future. So, the Colts should definitely be excited. They hung in this game, for a long time. At one point, I thought they were going to win it, but the main storyline for me is, man, Trevor Lawrence is just good. He is so good. I don't care if he's down by 20 points. I don't care if whatever. He's just going to be in the game and he's just going to throw the ball, and it's just he's just good. He can throw the ball anywhere over the field with confidence. He's going to make a play when he needs to. And this Jacksonville team is going to be really good. And Shane, you were wrong about Calvin Ridley, and I listened to you too much. And Dan ended up being the winner of that. So I'm a little mad at you because you scared me in our preview like 2 months ago
Yeah.
with all your Calvin Ridley stats. So I stayed away from him in every draft. And I'm a little salty with you right now.
Well, hey, it was only week 1. There's always flukes week 1. We'll see what happens. I mean, Michael Pittman, is he back? I guess it's hard. We can't make any real decisions necessarily yet. Last year, week 1, Michael Pittman, I think, had 27 to 30 fantasy points. And after that, he was pretty much irrelevant. We're looking at the same thing here. But with how good Anthony Richardson looked, I'd say Michael Pittman's probably back.
And not
And
to be
I,
too cocky, but I think Calvin Ridley's going to be pretty consistently.
No, I do too.
Calvin Ridley looked good, man.
Yeah, he's gonna be ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, when he says he's going for 1,400 yards, he's probably going for 1,400.
Yeah.
Damn. I was like, wow. Dan definitely is the beneficiary of that. Can I say a funny stat real quick?
Yep.
Deion Jackson, 13 rushing yards. Or I mean, sorry, 13 carries, 14 rushing yards.
And 2 fumbles. And 2 fumbles.
Yeah.
Shout out Deion Jackson. That's our fantasy stuff.
You sir just got benched for Zach Moss next week, and he has a broken
No,
arm.
congrats to Jonathan Taylor for getting paid.
Yeah.
That will be coming soon, I'm sure.
That was a funny stat. 1.1 yards per carry and 2 fumbles.
And speaking on Shane's talking about ETN earlier, Tank Bigsby did score. He had a few goal line carries, but yeah, ETN is going to be really good this year. We'll get on to the next game. It's the 49ers who went into Pittsburgh and won 30-7. It was a rout, dominant rout.
Dude.
I couldn't believe it. It was a Brock Purdy versus Kenny Pickett battle, and Kenny Pickett, man, what was that? That was, I know you're playing against the Niners defense, but he was just looking rough, making some crazy decisions. I didn't really know where he was throwing it to half the time, but yeah, that 49ers team looks electric, man.
I don't know if it's just because of the defense. The problem with this is apparently the Browns defense is absolutely locked down, and that's who the Steelers play this week. So I don't know if we'll get many answers, but I still feel like the Steelers should have been able to do more. They had the one touchdown they had, that drive was awesome. And it's like, where was that all game? I don't know. I mean, maybe Kenny Pickett just sucks. His QBR was 23 versus Brock Purdy's 91.3 QBR. Najee Harris, 6
He was
carries.
decent. He was decent.
6 who?
Najee. I think Najee was decent.
He had 6 carries.
But he was efficient at least, right?
6 carries.
5.2 yards per carry, Shane. That's not bad.
He had, but sure.
You got to feed him more.
Yeah, that's the problem. How does he only have 6 carries? That's absurd. And targets, 2 targets for 2 yards off two catches, 2 yards off 2 targets. That's just, they got to figure something out. And with Allen Robinson being your leading target leader, that is a huge problem. I mean, the Steelers, they had so much kind of fantasy upside going into this year. That yesterday, that was just that looked pathetic. So hopefully they can fix that because it's not looking good.
Yeah, preseason Kenny wasn't for real.
No.
Dude was flawless in preseason. He was like 20 of 20, like 3 touchdowns. But preseason Kenny duped us all. Sad to say.
Brock Purdy looked great too. Like Brandon Ayuk and Brock Purdy's connection was awesome. Ayuk had a literal perfect game. And Debo looked good. Like the Niners were firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Are we worried at all about George Kittle? I know tight ends as a whole were irrelevant, but George Kittle, we know he's boomer bust, but he was out there against a apparently bad defense. And Ayuk was getting the majority of the targets with Debo right behind him, and then George Kittle. And then CMC also was, let me see how many targets CMC had. I had to pull up. He had 5. So when Ayuk 8 targets, Samuel 7, Kittle 6, McCaffrey 5. So that's what we're saying on a week-to-week basis. It's there's so many targets being spread around. It's all over the place. This was Ayuk's week. I guess we'll see what happens next week.
During our tight end ranking, this is kind of what I was saying on why I'm soured on George Kittle this year in fantasy. It's just because like there's a real possibility he could be the 5th option for this team. It's just this team's too good. It's too volatile where the targets are going. Like you said, this was Brandon Ayuk's week. Next week, Brandon Ayuk could have a catch for 9 yards. That's totally in realm of possibilities. That's just this offense.
I want to give one more shout out. Shout out to Mr. Pat Fryermuth. 1 catch for 3 yards, but a touchdown.
So, you know who else I want to shout out?
Way to get in the end zone, kid. Way to get in the end zone. We needed that.
Also, shout out to Patrick Peterson, old man, who tried talking crap on Brock Purdy for some reason, like that was going to work. And then he just got like 3 touchdowns on his head, so he probably needs to retire. That was something wild in its own right. Brock Purdy like grew up in Arizona. That was just uncalled for. Patrick Peterson needs to retire. We'll move on to the Titans and Saints game, and I'll be honest, the Titans let me down. Saints win 16-15 at home, and I put money on this Titans team. I was pretty confident in it, and so I was just really wrong. The Titans look gross. Ryan Tannehill. In my notes for this game, I wrote Ryan Tannehill is poop ass cheeks. That's it. He's just terrible. Like the guy is so bad. Like he's not a serious NFL quarterback. They've got Matt Will. They've got Malik Willis. Will Levis behind him. Like they've got 2 serious quarterbacks behind him. I don't want Ryan Tannehill after that. Like I was confident in this Titans team. I've been hyping them up as the most underrated team in the NFL. But they can't be underrated when Ryan Tannehill's looking like that, and you can't even run the ball to Derrick Henry. He's getting out snapped because you're not even confident that you can run the ball because you're throwing the ball so bad. So that was a mess. I need to see more for the Titans. That was a mess.
He let my boy Chig down. He just hyper targeted DeAndre Hopkins, 13 targets, and the next in line was Nick Westbrook-Ikine at 7, and then it's just nothing from there. Treylon Burks, Chig Okonkwo, they got to see more targets. And Derrick Henry, what was the Derrick Henry, Tajay Spears? Didn't they totally split? Or didn't Tajay Spears?
Tajay had like a 1 or 2 more snaps. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's weird. That's weird. And Chris Olave is him. 108 catches on 112 yards.
And Rashid Shaheed and Michael Thomas. Right now, when it's healthy, that wide receiver trio is kind of nice.
Yeah. And yeah. Juwan Johnson's a fine tight end as well. Obviously, tight ends suck this week. So if we're grading it on a scale, Juwan Johnson had a really good week for tight ends. And Jamal Williams, the running game was disappointing for sure. They need Alvin Kamara back.
Yeah, this game was pretty gross. Outside of the field goal kickers, shout out Nick Folk going 5 for 5. Hope you guys had him on your fantasy teams, but you didn't. And then shout out whoever the Saints kicker is. I can't even remember his name. But he was 3 for 3. So, special teams, shout out to the special teams on this one. Really, really showed up. Yeah, overall, pretty gross game. Ryan Tannehill looked bad. There's not much more to say. Dan, your notes explained it. And then Derek Carr is just as serviceable as you kind of expect. Not going to do much. Not going to really hurt your team. Not going to really elevate it. But the receiving core does look pretty good for the Saints, and I think their defense looked pretty awesome too. Having 3 interceptions.
Yeah, I think if this Saints team can click, they're going to be pretty good. And I think I was underestimating them.
100%.
We'll get on to the Broncos and Raiders game. The Raiders go into Denver and beat the Broncos by 17-16. And this man right here, Damari Mathis, lost this game single-handedly for the Broncos. It was pretty embarrassing. I don't know if anyone was watching, but Jacoby Myers went down the first drive of the game and just scored on Damari Mathis and started talking crap and got a penalty for it, but it didn't matter because it was at that moment that the Broncos lost this game. Damari Mathis lost all confidence, and Jacoby Myers went on to look like prime Devontae Adams, and he got like 2 touchdowns, 100 yards, and 8 catches on Damari Mathis because Jimmy G just was going at Damari Mathis once he found that mismatch, and it was bad. It literally lost the Broncos this game. They were in pretty good control. I wasn't really thinking that they were going to lose, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Jacoby Myers comes in, and the Broncos can't really move the ball in the second half, and that's how it goes. But I don't know. I think Russ looked fine. I think he looked pretty efficient and slim. He looked pretty agile, so I'm not too worried about the Broncos. But that defense is rough. Losing Evero, that's going to be a problem.
The first thing I did after I saw Danny sent us a Pat Surtain stats for what he did against Devontae Adams. The first thing I did was went and checked the Broncos schedule to see who the Broncos play to make sure Pat Surtain doesn't go against any of my wide receivers. Unfortunately for me, Stephon Diggs is on that list. Have Stephon Diggs, so
that'll be a good matchup.
Yeah, Pat Surtain he's ridiculous. If you have not one of the obvious top 10 wide receivers, you seriously need to consider benching your wide receiver if Pat Surtain is the dude on that wide receiver, because he is just absolutely locked up. He made Devontae Adams a wide receiver too tonight or on Sunday.
Yeah, he did. Pat Surtain absolutely shut down. I mean, 6 targets for 66 yards doesn't seem bad, but for Devontae Adams, that's pretty bad. So I mean, like you said, he did make him the wide receiver too. But who would have thought? Raiders running the AFC West. Apparently they're the only 1-0 team in that poor division. So shout out the Raiders. Really taking over.
Josh Jacobs was
Fantasy bust. Josh Jacobs was not good. 20 carries, 48 yards, 2.5 yards per carry, 0 touchdowns. And usually he's the Bronco killer. He saved himself a teeny bit with 2 catches for 23 yards. But man, that was sad. I started Josh Jacobs, and he's been known to be a Bronco killer. And the Broncos defense did look really good outside of Damari Mathis, who got absolutely exposed by Jacoby Myers. But Russell Wilson actually played pretty efficient football, which is good for the Broncos. No turnovers, 27 of 34, really accurate. Didn't really make any bad mistakes. He didn't really run a lot, which I thought he maybe would have done more. And yeah, it's interesting. Week 1 is interesting. Raiders are top of the AFC West. I'm scratching my head right now trying to process everything that happened, but let's move on. Let's get off of this one for Dan.
Real quick, when Jerry Jeudy is back, this dude's going to be a target machine. I mean, you got Adam Troutman leading the team in targets. When Jeudy comes back, this dude's going to be a monster when it comes to volume.
Yeah, I think Broncos definitely missing a true wide receiver 1 right now.
Yeah, I think they kind of didn't really know where to give those targets to, because they still weren't really throwing to Sutton. He kind of stayed in his wide receiver 2 role. So I think Jeudy will be a big boost. And yeah, P. Ryan can't be your leading receiver. Troutman can't be your leading target getter. So we'll move on to the Eagles and Patriots game. This was a very scrappy one, like everyone kind of predicted. And my biggest takeaway was Mac was fantastic. He played in a gross weather game against a really good defense, but he was very, very efficient, one of the more efficient quarterbacks of the week. And I think my biggest takeaway is I'm just looking forward to this Patriots team moving forward, because I think they're going to be really competent in the playoff game, or in the playoff race, the very thick of it. And now that Aaron Rodgers is hurt, they could easily be in that playoff race. They're going to be really good.
Go get Kendrick Bourne off the waiver wire. Mac Jones threw the ball 54 times. I think that was the most out of all quarterbacks this week. That's crazy. Kendrick Bourne, Ramondre had 6 targets. But yeah, that was impressive. It was bad weather. It started out slow and gross, but they picked it up in the second half. Zeke needs to stop touching the football field. He sucks at football. Give Ramondre those carries, because that was bad. Ramondre he had 12 carries, which I was expecting more, but only 25 yards off those carries. So that definitely needs to go up. Granted, I get it was against the Eagles, but still.
Yeah. Shout out to the Patriots, honestly. They hung in there. At first, it kind of felt like it was going to be a blowout after, Mac Jones pick 6, but they hung in there, and he played a heck of a football game. Completing 35 passes and throwing for 3 touchdowns against that secondary, against that pass rush. Probably 2 of the better defenses in the NFL going at it. But it was a scrappy, really good football game, and the Patriots hung in there, and I thought the Eagles would. I don't know. I guess I wasn't expecting the Patriots to score 20 points, but I thought it would be almost like a 21-0 type game, not like a blowout, because the Patriots defense is definitely good enough to keep them in any game. But they played a real scrappy brand of football, and Mac Jones was slinging the ball and did it really good at a high level against a really good secondary. Jalen Hurts, honestly, thought we'd see a little bit more of him. 170 passing yards on the day. I don't know, and I guess he ran the ball okay. Kenneth Gainwell, apparently RB1, which is
there was talks about that in training camp, about Kenneth Gainwell is the dude getting all the touches. It was weird when they came out with their depth chart and they listed all the running backs as the running back one. That was
And
weird. And Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch. That doesn't. I don't. What's going on there? That doesn't make any sense to me.
he was their leading receiver in the backfield too.
Yeah.
He got 18 total touches.
And Swift shouldn't have been drafted at all in fantasy.
If you draft him in fantasy, that was already a bad pick, and he might have lost to your league. Like that's how bad that pick already is.
You can drop.
Yeah,
you can drop DeAndre Swift. Truly, you can drop him.
1 carry for 3 yards. Shout out DeAndre Swift.
And 2 targets, 1 catch for 0 yards. He's not worth holding on to. Boston Scott was more relevant than him. Obviously, Kenneth Gainwell. Maybe if Rashad Penny plays, who knows? But yeah, DeAndre Swift.
This was a weird game. Like that is something to note. Like Goddard had zero catches for 0 yards. That is weird too. Like this was just a weird game.
Yeah, I don't know if we should overreact to this one or how we should feel. I mean, are we really? I mean, Kenneth Gainwell seems to be RB1. I mean, that does seem to be true. You don't just get 18 touches to 1, or 14 carries to 1 carry. But I don't know. The Eagles are weird. They're kind of the ones who created the running back by committee. So maybe DeAndre Swift gets 14 carries next week. I don't know. It's a weird game. It's only week 1. I don't really know how to feel about it, but yeah, as of right now, DeAndre Swift is irrelevant and should be on the waiver wire.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on both these teams moving forward. We'll get on to the Rams and Seahawks game, and the Rams
week 1, baby.
30-13 in Seattle. What the hell happened? What the hell happened? I can't say anything. What the hell happened?
There's so many takeaways here. Go get Puka Nacua. Go get Kyron Williams. Go get Matthew Stafford. He's a great quarterback to have on your bench. There's Van Jefferson was a huge disappointment. Tyler Higbee was solid when it comes to tight ends. But man, Puka and Tutu and Kyron, those guys kind of came out of nowhere. And the Seahawks, that was disappointing because I liked them and I wanted to see them. I want to see them do well this season. But Geno Smith, 112 yards. That's just terrible. Tyler Lockett, I think he got a concussion pretty early on. That sucked. But yeah, it didn't look good overall for the Seahawks.
Yeah, they pull the Bengals. But I mean, to a worse team that they really shouldn't have lost to. I mean, the Bengals at least played the Browns, who had potential and everything. But this Rams roster it's pretty ugly. And Puka Nacua is wide receiver 1 right now, and I bet most of you have never even heard of him. And the only reason we know of him is because we live in Utah and we are friends.
Played against him in high school. That's what.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, the fact that Puka Nacua is wide receiver 1 right now, and they're beating the Seahawks, who are, I mean, arguably, like Danny was talking about, Super Bowl sleepers. It is week 1. I don't know if we can fully overreact, but Geno didn't look good. The Seahawks defense looked awful. But I have to do a shout out again. Cam Akers, 22 carries for 29 yards, 1.3 yards per carry.
Dude,
shout out Cam Akers.
Kyron Williams. Go get Kyron Williams in your guys' leagues if you can, and try to trade high on Cam Akers, because it was very clear that Kyron Williams was the dude for the Rams. Like he took over the backfield mid-game, and it looks like they're gonna keep riding Kyron Williams. So I'm scared about that.
The volume was there though for Cam Akers. He just didn't make the most of it.
And Puka Nacua, pick him up too. He's going to be so electric in your guys' fantasy leagues. It's really fun. Someone with that kind of volume, and it kind of confirms that Cooper Kupp's going to be a beast too, because Sean McVay is a great coach, and Stafford still has it. He looked good.
Absolutely.
We'll go on to the Packers and Bears, and this game is J Love is a cool ass. That's like the best way you can describe him as a quarterback. He's just cool. Like there's never a moment that I see him getting flustered or anything. If he moves out of the pocket, he's always just chill and never really worried scanning down the field. And he looked really good. I was really impressed by this Bears team. And they go in there and win 38-20. I think the biggest takeaway is Justin Fields might not be it. Like the Bears might be really, really bad. They might be in contention for the first overall pick again.
Jordan Love, yeah, he was extremely impressive. Granted, started out slow. I was kind of frustrated for selfish reasons. I have Aaron Jones, but Jordan Love was the only quarterback this week with 3 touchdowns and no picks. He was great. Aaron Jones. I mean, everyone knows Aaron Jones. He was awesome. Hopefully, that hamstring injury isn't anything. It didn't seem like it was based on the reports afterwards, and he seemed like he's all right. And Luke Musgrave was one stumble away from a touchdown, and I think it was one overthrow away from another touchdown. So Luke Musgrave, go pick him up right now. He should have had at least one touchdown. And then if he did, we would have been talking about him more. Luke Musgrave is going to be a great tight end to have in your team. But yeah, Romeo Dobbs, he was awesome with no Christian Watson. I think we knew that though going into it.
And Aaron Jones, shout out your guy. He looked just electric. Like he looked the part. He looked in his prime. He looked really fast, and he looked like it also looks like they're phasing out AJ Dillon, which you love to see because that's what we wanted to see for fantasy.
Apparently, if you're part of the 2020 draft class and you didn't get paid this offseason, you played really well in week 1. This so shout out the 2020 guys who did not get paid yet. But honestly,
Herbert's the only one that played well and got paid. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. Not the outcome I would have liked, but yeah, the Packers really did look good. They came out here firing. Jordan Love's first, home opener, start of the season game. He looks like he could be the next great Packers quarterback. I mean, he's following in the footsteps of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers right now, and he definitely played good. And I think he'll progressively get better. So I'm super excited about Jordan Love, and he could also be another fantasy waiver wire sleeper. I bet he's available in most of your leagues. Pick him up. Just let him ride the bench. He could be something really good. I feel like this Packers team is going to start throwing a lot. And I think that, Aaron Jones is best in the receiving game. And I would love to see him get more receiving volume. And I mean, he only had, 2 receptions, but for 86 yards and a touchdown. So love to see that. Love to get him more involved. But honestly, on the negative side of this for the Bears, I'm worried about Justin Fields. I'm worried about this Bears team. They didn't look good. They came out flat. It didn't look good, and it's just disappointing because we expect so much more from Justin Fields. Super disappointed in how DJ Moore was used too. Didn't like that for a fantasy aspect. But yeah, I mean, overall, just kind of disappointing on the Bears end, and kind of expected more. Kind of wanted it to be a closer game, but didn't turn out to be like that.
Yeah, it was a complete blowout. Not what you want to see. We'll go on to the opposite of that, just a back and forth barn burner of a game.
I didn't want to get
to the Dolphins. The Dolphins beat the Chargers in LA 36-34, and I'm just gonna let Stores at the floor and rant.
You get 1 minute. It started. Go.
It feels bad, man. I only got 1 minute to rant, but shout out. Let's start on the positive end. Shout out Kellen Moore, absolute stud. The offense was efficient, looked really good. Herbert played good. The running backs, were fantastic. Austin Eckler, 16 carries, 117 yards, 7.3 yards a carry, 1 touchdown. Josh Kelly, 16 carries, 91 yards, 5.7 yards a carry, and 1 touchdown. So shout out Kellen Moore. I wanted to say something positive. The offense looked great. But, man, Brandon Staley, you are a fraud. You are an embarrassment. I absolutely hate you. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to feel about this season because you just made an offense that scored 34 lose. You left Tyreek Hill one-on-one on an island against a guy who just came off an injury, who was an absolute liability against the fastest guy in the league, and he played man-on-man coverage. All right. Sorry, Shane.
You went 1 second over. It's all right. That was such a fun game to watch, though. For fantasy purposes, so many weapons out there. It was unfortunate for Store's sake the way it ended. Personally, I didn't really care. I just want to see a good game, and that's what we got. Tyreek Hill is ridiculous, and Tua's a great
dropping dimes.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna hurry and cut you off. I don't know how when a guy is absolutely torching your defense, you decide to play man-on-man coverage and just continue into the second half. Into the second half of the football game, when this guy already has 120 yards against you, you're like, it's a good idea to just leave him on an island. And let's bench our other guy and let's put in undrafted free agent Jasir Taylor one-on-one with Tyreek Hill and see how that goes. I mean, it's just absolutely disgraceful, disgusting coaching, no adjustment by Brandon Staley. This guy needs to be put on a pedestal and be crucified because he needs to answer to his crimes and his sins against humanity. And it's flat out an embarrassment. The Chargers have the highest paid defense in all the NFL in terms of starters, and you're allowing 36 points. I mean, again, and shout out to the Dolphins. Tua played great. Tyreek Hill is an alien. You got to give him credit. Tua was just laying it. I mean, there was one play where Tyreek Hill was guarded perfectly and Tua just drops an absolute dime. I don't even know how it got into his hands, but it just did for a touchdown on a fade. Shout out to the Dolphins. Shout out to their coaching staff. And this is sorry, I'm going on my rant again, Shane. You can put a timer on, but I mean, this is the kind of football that's fun to watch. It's an absolute just scoring fest, and it's electric. It's exciting football. At the end of the day, though, the Chargers just got outcoached. Mike McDaniels and Vic Fangio are definitely a lot smarter than Brandon Staley.
And to add to that, like to get really into it and to add to what you said, Staley was playing man coverage against the Dolphins. That's something, as the Chargers learned against the Dolphins last year, you don't do. And McDaniel kind of made it impossible for Tyreek to be double teamed because of his pre-snap motions and everything. He was literally like changing the coverage assignments pre-snap, like he was playing Madden against the Chargers. That's how, like, he was literally manipulating the game in that kind of way. That's how you know he's a real game-changing coach, and you have to take him seriously as a head coach. And Staley, I don't think you can say the same about, because he has to make some adjustments and he doesn't really make them. And that was a masterclass by the Dolphins and McDaniel, I'll be honest.
It's painful as a Chargers fan coming off of a Jacksonville loss from last season to this. It hurts. It hurts every year. It feels no different, and I'm sad.
I'm sorry, man.
It's okay. We'll bounce back. If they can just get a win week 2, maybe my mindset will change.
I don't think there's much worth talking about for this next game.
Yeah, both teams are going to be absolutely fine. We'll get on to the next game. The Cowboys Giants, 40-0 Cowboys. I think the one thing to talk about is shout out to Dan Quinn, because this defense is going to be like a legendary defense, one that we're going to be talking about for decades. This is going to be a really fun team to watch, and it doesn't really matter what Dak or this offense does at this point. It's kind of looking like this defense is just going to make the season really easy on them.
Yeah, Dak can go 13 of 24 for 143 yards, no touchdowns, and still win by 40 points. So pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Giants, they sucked. I want to see them play against a normal defense, not a defense like these guys. Because that was a joke. Saquon, pathetic. Daniel Jones, I'm so glad I made a last minute move and benched him, because it was terrible.
How did Darren Waller end up doing statistically?
He had like 2 catches for 42 yards, I think, or 46 yards. He had 6.6 points. So, and he didn't play like the whole second half because of the blowout. And I know they were trying to with his injury. 3 catches, 36 yards.
Okay.
5 targets.
That was rough. Another takeaway is Tony Pollard was awesome. That guy's going to be just so good for the Cowboys all year long.
My earlier prediction for Tony Pollard RB1 this season,
looking good.
Yeah, looking pretty good. Tony Pollard is a stud, and I honestly think he'll get better next week and even do even more. So, if you got Tony Pollard, congrats. He's a stud.
Yeah, if the Cowboys have the ball enough, like, this defense is so good. But we'll get on to the game that just barely happened tonight, and that is the Bills at Jets. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers goes down in the first drive. It's absolutely terrible. It was so exciting just thinking about what Aaron Rodgers could do with this Jets team and defense. It's going to be depressing just talking about it. But it's really exciting that this Jets team rallied around him and played for him and beat the Bills team. I'll say Josh Allen's still playing YOLO ball. It's concerning.
Careless
it's concerning, man. He's
Not even just with his throws. He was doing some stupid runs. There was one run, he got the first down. That's all he needed. It was like the first. It was the first half. It could have been the first quarter. First quarter. Um, he got the first down, and he tried to get a couple more yards, and he took a big hit. And I saw, his coach McDermott over there telling him to be smart. It's just stupid things like that. He's still doing. I don't know what his deal is. He's just trying to play hero ball. He's got to stop that with the weapons he has. He doesn't need to play hero ball. Just get the ball to those weapons.
It's like when he gets the lead, he wants the other team to come back lately. I don't know what he's doing with it.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the Jets defense because I mean they're legit. They're a top 5 defense too. The Jets defense kept them in that game all day long. I mean, Jordan Whitehead with 3 interceptions. I mean, Jets defense was playing out of their minds. So, and the Jets run game, Breece Hall, who would have thought 10 carries, 127 yards. I mean, he had that like 180-yard run. Absolutely ridiculous for a guy who just came off of an ACL injury. Looked fantastic. But yeah, I mean, pretty disappointing and heart-wrenching for the Jets fans. I mean, if you'd have had Aaron Rodgers and you played like that, you're probably beating the Bills close to 39, 40 points. So, and for Garrett Wilson managers, he did have that absolutely incredible catch. That was honestly, I don't even understand how he caught that. He like one-handed hit the ball back into himself, secured it. That was pretty cool. But I mean, the Jets defense is going to keep them in games, and it would have been really fun to see Rodgers. So I hope the bad news is really not a torn Achilles. I hope it's something wild.
It's not confirmed, but if you watch the video, you can quite literally see it pop. I think he's done for season. Nothing's, as we're recording this, nothing's come out yet. But yeah, I think he's done for season. At this point, with Zach Wilson at quarterback, I think Garrett Wilson is your only option, and you can't play anyone else. Wide receiver wise, Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook, it's hard, but it looks like Breece Hall is going to be that dude again. It's just going to take some time for them to ease him into it.
Dalvin Cook was the leading toucher in the game, though, with 3 receptions and 13 carries. So he did lead that. 16 touches to Breece's 11. So that's interesting, but Breece was definitely a lot more efficient.
Yep.
I actually like that Thunder and Lightning a lot too. Like I think Breece, first of all, looked very just agile and his cuts were awesome. Like he looked back already, which is crazy. These guys coming off injuries nowadays are just absurd. But Dalvin Cook too. Like I honestly, I think me and Josh were talking about it on the podcast that it's kind of a weird complementary duo. Like physically, they don't really complement each other like Zeke and Tony Pollard did or something like that. But honestly, watching the game, I was kind of like getting excited watching these two just pound the ball and just taking turns. I think it's a really fun duo. I think it's going to be one of the better in the NFL. So I really like this Dalvin and Breece duo.
Yeah. Then again, just need to point out, really disappointed in Josh Allen. But the last time Josh Allen did play the Jets, they did lose, and he threw 2 interceptions in the last game in November, and they lost 20-17. So maybe the Jets are Josh Allen's kryptonite. But again, like you talking, just the brand of football he's playing is kind of disappointing for a guy of his talent.
Gabe Davis was once again disappointing. It seems like we keep going into. I was higher on him this year. We keep going into the season high on him, and then I know it's only week 1, but he was disappointing. Stephon Diggs, he just took all the targets, all the catches. So I guess we'll see next week if they have I hope they have an easier matchup so Josh Allen can get his confidence back after this game.
Yeah, I'd like to see Dalton Kincaid get a little bit more involved. He was the second leading receiver.
For a rookie tight end, I was pretty impressed to see how much they were using him right off the rip.
Yeah, and technically listed as the backup tight end too right now. So I think Dalton Kincaid will progress and start getting more targets too, because he's already their wide receiver too, in my opinion.
Yep. And yeah, Josh Allen will be fine. Gabe Davis is a little rough, but Josh Allen will be fine if you can just play some smarter football, man. I don't know why he wants to let the other teams back in, but yeah, I just want him to play a little more careful.
Oh, the Jets had no chance of even coming close if Josh Allen didn't Josh Allen gave away the game.
He literally,
and a fumble.
The fumble was the worst.
The butt fumble was like a Mark Sanchez butt fumble. He fumbled it twice on one play. that Yeah, 2 fumbles in one play and 3 interceptions. It's like, come on, Josh Allen, what are you doing?
Yeah, and he had a few games last year where it was like the exact same thing. He just found ways to lose at the end, and it's for no reason. Like I don't know what it is, but I need to see him play smarter. Any other takeaways you guys have?
No, it was good to be back. Let's get into week 2.
Yeah, week 2, we'll get a little bit more accurate representation of what's a real feel. Right now, week 1, it's all up in the air. It's all weird. I mean, if you would have told me the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Bengals would start out this season 0-3, if you took a bet on that and you bet all 3 of those teams to win, I mean, and they all 3 lost. I mean, it's nuts. So,
Or if you took all 3 to lose, you'd be making big bucks.
exactly. So, I mean, weird week. Week 2 is going to be a lot more telling of what's to come. And, it's fun. This is a fun episode. And I'm excited we got to do this.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in to the NFL Seekers podcast. We have our week 2 NFL preview in just a few days. We'll be talking about our fantasy football starts and just previewing every single game for week 2. So it'll be really fun. Stay tuned to the NFL Seekers podcast. Like, subscribe. Peace.
Yes, sir.
Peace.
Peace.